Welcome to Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, just to hear it out loud. Join Toby Malone and TJ Young, along with some special friends, as we puzzle our way through what we once thought was an unreadable book to produce a surprisingly listenable podcast. It is Monday, September 30th, 2024. It has been 136 days since we've started reading, with 382 pages complete of 628, meaning we have 246 pages left to go and are 60.83% of the way through Finnegan's Wake. Welcome to episode 26 of Wake, the podcast that unpacks all the puzzles, identifies all the characters, and makes clear all of the points of difficulty. Just kidding, we don't do any of that. All in the name of fulfilling a long-held bucket list item, reading James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake out loud just once. I am your host, Toby Malone, joined once more by the man who journey far and wide for the people he cares about, TJ Young. Hi, TJ.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm excited to be here as well, especially to take a nod from what you're saying. I get to go to Italy for a wedding in a couple days.
Amazing.
Which is
so good.
In the middle of the semester, which feels like a blessing.
Amazing. I have such a temptation to tell you to take your book with you and then we'll do an episode from Italy, but I'm not going to do that to you.
I was like, I'm going to let you know right now.
Yeah, you do your Italy. You enjoy that trip without having to worry about Joyce for a while, but still, I can't wait to hear all about it.
What Italian modernist writers are there that I should be diving into?
That's true. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I always love Pirandello. Does he count? I think he might count.
He might count, but I know Pirandello, so...
Right. Okay. I'm sure we can find some. So, and I would say hit us up in the comments, but you'll be back by the time that this is out. So, we'll talk about it on our Instagram somewhere, I'm sure. And also here with us on the fourth episode featuring my beloved ex-students is a real all-star, historian, reenactor, all-round brilliant mind. It's Jackie Mahoney. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me. Can you just do that introduction whenever I walk into a room? That would be...
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Make it a ringtone or something.
You'll have a recording, so just make sure to put it on loop, time it with the mechanism or something.
DJ and I are very much about gassing up our former students to make sure it's clear about how brilliant we think they are. So this is an easy thing for us. Is the absolute privilege and pride of the work that we do is that we get to meet these brilliant minds at 18, 19 years old and then see them flourish out in the world. So that's the best.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have been to learn under you and TJ to have met you all of 5 minutes ago.
So, Jackie, you work in a whole bunch of really interesting, eclectic ways. You've done a lot of work in historical theatre, reenactment sort of work.
Yep.
So, what kinds of and you work at a pioneer village now? Tell us about the kinds of work that you're into.
So right now I have a bunch of casual jobs, which are all amazing because they somehow all work together with schedules and things, which is awesome. So my main job is at the newly renamed village of Black Creek. It used to be Black Creek Pioneer Village. Now it's Village of Black Creek. Yeah. So there I'm a history actor. So I do performances about the real people who lived and worked in our buildings, highlighting stories that don't often get told in our traditional interpretation. I also work for a world touring theater company called Live History, where we make, let's see if I can get it all, site-specific, historical, escape game-based interactive performances for museums, historic sites, community centers, and schools around the world. I also work at the Cambridge ID Exchange, which is our library. I am also a background actor, and I'm going to be on Murdoch Mysteries this week, which is very exciting.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
It's so good.
And then I also am a ghostwriter for historical romance novels.
Oh, see, you should have led with that.
Sorry, I know.
The lead here. That's That's where the real gold is. Amazing. That's great. Yeah.
The fact that you're a ghostwriter is, I used to love the television show as a child, which is about a ghost who
Oh.
writes to help solve crimes. It's completely different. But but I can tell you that I remember the heartbreak and intrigue simultaneously as I found out that my favorite book series as a child, Animorphs, was ghost written. You know?
Animals ghost written.
Yeah, K.A. Applegate didn't do all that. And so, but then I instantly became intrigued. I'm like, who are these people? Like, why are their names now and everything? And then I realized it's really about selling a franchise and that people get behind a franchise and a name that way.
I've been doing that forever. That was the Hardy Boys and the Nancy Drew.
yeah.
All of that was all ghost written. That was just under that single name. That's so cool.
I mean,
that you're doing that work.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. There are some aspects of it that I'm like, yeah, this is something I can absolutely do. And then there's other parts where I'm like, I have no idea what I'm writing here, and I hope that people enjoy it.
So are they giving you a structure or a narrative and that you're writing around it, or are you asked to come up with the historical romances of from the scratch?
It depends on the client. Like I get a bunch of different clients. And so sometimes they give me just like a skeleton outline of a chapter by chapter breakdown. And then sometimes they say, these are the themes we want. Can you write us an outline and then write the book? Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. I mean, you came by it honestly. You won the Theatre Criticism Award in my last year at University of Waterloo. And so I was very good. I still remember the look on your face when you won that award. You were shocked. And amazed that you would be given an award, but you were a very good theatre critic, so that's not a surprise. And the other really fun connection that we have is that I accidentally introduced you to your husband.
You did, yes. We were doing a production of Romeo and Juliet, and my husband Keith was just like randomly there helping out that one night. He wasn't involved with it otherwise, and so I hadn't met him yet. And You just went up to him? Is that right? Was he the first one you went up to?
No, I was at that production with my kids, and you and Alan, a couple of my former students, were in the production. And so I said to my kids, I'm going to go and say hi backstage before the show. And they're like, you can't do that. You can't do that. You don't know those actors. Like, yes, I do. Tybalt is my former student, Jackie. Let me go. We're going to go. And so I went around the back stage, and this man was standing there, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah. One of my former students is in the show. Her name's Jackie. I'd love to say hi before the show." And I was wearing my UW sweater.
Oh, nice.
And he went, "Okay." So he went backstage and found you, but he didn't know you, right?
No.
He said, "Is there someone here called Jackie?"
Yeah. He walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, is there someone here named Jackie Mahoney?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's me." And he was like, "Oh, okay. Toby Malone wants to say that like he's here in the audience." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And I'm kind of like, who is this strange person? And then he just keeps looking at me and sits down in front of me and starts to like engage with me. And I'm still like, who are you? Are you a member of the audience? What's going on? Eventually it all got figured out and I married him. So that was
amazing. And then you contacted me a little later. I think you wrote was it a poem that
yeah, it was our like our love story in our program at our wedding. And so I just included a little thing that said like Toby Malone introduced us.
Which is, I mean, makes me so happy. It's maybe one of my favorite stories I've ever been involved with. So
it is in this moment that I do remember Toby telling me this story. And I'm like, now the face and the story collide.
The synergy of it all. Oh, that's so good. I also want to acknowledge that today is Orange Shirt Day here in Canada. Today is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th. So I'm wearing an orange shirt in honor of that. Yeah, very important that we acknowledge where we've come from as Canadians. Jackie and I both here in Canada, but all over the place, and acknowledging that relationship between all of the members of our society, including the people who were here first. So that is why you'll see an orange shirt in our Instagram story in a minute when you see it there. Okay, but anyway, enough of all of the catch up. Let's find out the important stuff. What is your relationship with James Joyce? Do you have one?
Me specifically?
You, Jackie. Yes.
Oh,
I know
me.
all about TJ's.
All right.
He's been here for it.
My great connection to James Joyce is I was at I don't remember the name of the museum. It's like the Little Museum of Dublin or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing this guided tour, and the guide was excellent. And he comes over to this bookcase, and he shows off this book, and he's like, "This is a first edition of James Joyce's, what was it, Ulysses? I think it was Ulysses."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like turned to the first page and open like that. And he's like, "Yes, we leave it open at this page because this is as far as people ever get." And then he walks on to the next thing.
Wonderful.
So that's
yeah.
basically all I know. Except, I mean, I've listened to a bit of the podcast. I will shamefully admit I'm like halfway through episode 2, so I'm a little bit behind.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay.
You're so safe. You know, the fact that you got it that far shows that you care deeply.
A lot of people come on later on and say, "Oh, well, I've missed the last 15 episodes, so will I know what's happening in the story?" And we just laugh. That's not really what this is about.
Oh, that's great.
How do you feel about cold reads? As an actor, is it something that you were happy doing, cold reads for auditions?
I find them mildly horrifying. I'm a person who likes to over-prepare. And so I was in a bit of a fix this morning because I was like, I want to be prepared in that I know what I'm reading and like the sections and stuff. But it's a cold read, and so I want to adhere to that. And so I read like the first chunk of whatever I'm doing, and I read it out loud to Keith because he was like, "What is this?" He doesn't know Joyce very much at all.
Yeah.
And so I read it out loud to him, and then when I was finished, I looked up and he's just staring at me, and I was like, "That's it." And he was like, "Good luck, okay."
No. Good. Well, that's fine, and that's exactly what this is supposed to be. And what we're trying to do is just hear it. And sometimes things will just pop out to us when we're going that we hadn't thought of. Sometimes we get to the end and we go, we didn't get anything at all. But that's all part of it. That's fine. It's interesting you talk about over preparing. One of the resources I like to bring a new resource in each week about something that I found. In terms of over preparing, there is somewhere, if you're interested in going afterwards, called the James Joyce Digital Archive, which is, I'm putting it into the chat here so you all can see it, but it's it's enfolded texts of all of Joyce's work with errata and corrections, and so you can see where he changed the text and where things changed around. And so you can see here different kinds of things, digital versions of Finnegan's Wake and Ulysses that you can sort of click around in. And so you can, and with all the annotations, so you can sort of click on a page and it takes you through. So if you go to Finnegan's Wake and then go to, say, episodes, we have all the different versions, the 2010 edition, the 1939 edition, the errata, all of the different kind of proofs. And so these have been piled up. I love these digital humanities projects that are available. And I'll link all of this in our show notes. So this is why we don't suggest that you prepare, because if you start to prepare, you'll just never stop because there's so much in there. And trying to get meaning out of this is a fool's errand because it's a lifetime's work. So
yeah, you can kind of analyze it to death if you want to.
That's right. But as we've been going through, we have been analysing and discussing, and we've found ourselves into the last chapter of book 2 somehow. A miracle that we got here. We really didn't think we were going to get past page 15 or something. We did one chapter and thought, oh, is that enough? But we are finally here. In the end of book 2, and this is a chapter which is another well-known one because it is based on a myth that has sort of found its way into a lot of popular culture called Tristan and Isolde. So that's what this section is about. But true to form with Joyce, it's not as straightforward as you might think it is. So are you familiar with the story of Tristan and Isolde?
Not at all.
Yeah,
I saw this movie. That's all I know.
Yes, there was a James Franco movie in 2006. And the trailer, I'll also put that in show notes because the trailer, because it's in 2006, it has the compulsory use of Evanescence in the in the trailer.
Oh, can you see into my eyes?
Pretty much, yeah. It's and so there's so much of that, and James Franco being very Franco-ish. But it's most famous because Wagner was obsessed with it, and he sort of made various opera versions of this. And so it's an Irish sort of tale. It's a British tale. So it's about this Irish king from Cornwall whose name is King Mark, which I think there should be more.
Such a name.
Should be more King Mark.
Hey, Mark. Okay, Mark.
Yeah, and so Mark sends his kinsman Tristan, another excellent
So
royal
regal.
name. So he sends him off to Ireland to bring back his bride to be, Isolde, back to him to get married to him. And on the way, Isolde has been given a potion by her mother, and she said, "Oh, here's a potion for you to drink on your wedding night." But while they're on the way back, Tristan and Isolde both drink the potion, and then they don't realize that it's a love potion, and Tristan and Isolde fall in love with each other. And so then they're on their way back, and of course it ends badly. Of course, the most famous, one of the most the piece of music that I know best out of it is called the Liebestod, which means love death. Which is so quite metal, and it's
very German,
but also very beautiful. It's featured. It's the final tune that we hear at the end of Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. After Juliet's died, we hear the Liebestod. So it's sort of we're in and around the culture there, and so we're going to be hearing a little bit of Tristan and Isolde. How much we get of that story, it remains to be seen. Maybe and likely none of it, but the story is in there. The other interesting thing that comes up in this chapter, and probably the most famous thing that you'll ever read about Finnegan's Wake in popular culture, is the word that was coined in Finnegan's Wake, which is now a very popular word in particle physics. So this is the chapter. I don't know if you're looking at your edition right now, but you can see the second word on the first page. Is a quark. Yeah. So a quark, which is a word that Joyce just stuck in there because, Joyce likes to make up words. There was a man called Murray Gell-Mann who was a physicist in the 60s who was trying to come up with a name for a concept of an elementary particle of matter smaller than a proton or a neutron. And since it had never been written down, he decided that it would be a quark. And then he noticed that it was mentioned in Finnegan's Wake. There's a word, 3 quarks for Mr. Mark. And he felt as though the hypothetical particles he was talking about came in threes, and there were 3 quarks for Mr. Mark. So he was like, there you go, that's what the word is going to be. And so now the word quark, I would say quark because I'm Australian, but quark was coined by Finnegan's Wake. So we will hear the first use of the word quark here in this edition.
That's really cool.
That's very quirky,
Quirky, yes. Ha ha ha. Very good.
I had to.
As always, we are reading from the Penguin Modern Classics edition of Finnegan's Wake, published in 2000 with a foreword by Seamus Dean. Today we'll be reading Chapter 2-4, the final episode in Chapter 2, from pages 383 to 399 in this edition. This is a segment entitled Tristan and Isolde by the Oxford World's Classic edition of 2012, which also includes brief summaries of what is happening in each subsection, which we will address at the end of the reading. And now, without further ado, Finnegan's Wake. 3 quarks for Muster Mark. Sure he hasn't got much of a bark, and sure he has it all beside the mark. But oh, Reneagle Almighty, wouldn't be a sky of a lark to see that old buzzard whooping about for unshirt in the dark, and he hunting round for unspeckled trousers around by Palmerston Park. Ho, 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 Malty Mark. You're the rummiest old rooster ever flopped out of a Noah's Ark, and you think you're cock of the walk. Fowls up. Tristy's the spry young spark that'll tread her and wed her and bed her and red her without ever thinking the tail of a feather. And that's how that chap's going to make his money and mark. Overhoved. shrilly screaming. That song sang sea swans, the winging ones, seahawk, seagull, curlew and plover, kestrel and capercailzie. All the birds of the sea, they trolled out right bold when they smacked the big cuss of Tristan with Isolde. And there they were too when it was dark, whilst the wild caps were circling, as slow their ship, the winds as light, upborne the fates, the Wardhorse moved, by courtesy of Mr. Doe below, down below, came Sally, listening in as hard as they could, in Doubledorp, the donker, by the tawny yold of the waterfalls, with the Vauxons and their kemen so had a jockey, only a quarterbuck askell for the last axe, to the Solans and the sycamores and the wild geese and the gannets and the migratories and the missel thrushes and the auspices and all the birds of the rock by succorous so ocean or sea, all four of them, all sighing and sobbing and listening, Michael a hoikling.
They were the big four, the four master waves of Erin, all listening for. There was old Matt Gregory, and then besides old Matt, there was old Marcus Lyons, the four waves. And oftentimes they used to be saying grace together, right enough. Bos Nabitha in Miracle Square. Here now are the four of us, old Matt Gregory, and old Marcus, and old Luke Tarpey. The four of us, and sure, thank God, there are no more of us. And sure now, you wouldn't go and forget and leave out the other fellow, and old Johnny McDougall. The four of us and no more of us, and so now pass the fish for Christ's sake, amen. The way they used to be saying their grace before fish, repeating itself after the interims of Augsburg for old Lang Syne. And so there they were, with their palms in their hands like the pulchrum's procles, spraining their ears, listening and listening to the oceans of kissing, with their eyes glistening, all the four, when he was kiddling and cuddling and bunny-hugging scrumptious his Colleen Bawn and Dinkum Bell and Oscar's sister, on the 15-inch love seat, behind his chieftainess stewardess Cuban, the hero of Gaelic champion, the oneliest of her choice, her blue ideal of a girl's friend. Neither big ugly nor small nice, meaning pretty much everything to her then, with his sinister dexterity, light and rough handling. Visum versum her ragbags et associatiums, fore and aft, on and off sides, the brew brunt sex fodder, handson and handsome, that was palpably wrong and bubbly improper, and cuddling her and kissing her tutti fait charmante, in her ensemble of Medena blue, with an overdress of net, tickled with goldies, Isola misola, and wisping and lisping her about Trisolani sands, how one was whips for two was two, and two was lips for one was three, and dissimulating themselves with his pogue-like era na pogue, and dear annual. They all four remembered who made the world and how they used to be at the time in the vulgar ear, cuddling and kiddling her, after an oyster supper in Cullen's barn, from under her missel thrush and kissing and listening, in the good old bygone days of Dion Bukako, the elder, in Era na Pogue, in the other world of the passing of the key of two-tongue common, with Nush, the carrier of the word, and with Mesh, the cutter of the reed, in one of the far back pitch-black centuries when who made the world, when they knew O'Clery, the man on the door, when they were all four collegians on the nod near the Nodderlands Nursky, white boys and oak boys, peep of Tim boys and piping tomboys, raising hell while the sin was shining, with their slates and satchels playing Florian's fables and Communic suctions and Velicar frictions with Mixum members, in the Queen's Oltonian colleges, along another fellow, a prime number, Todius Quodius, and paying a pot of triblets to Boris O'Brien, the butler of Clump Thump, 2 loaves, 2 turnovers, plus 1 crown, to see the mad Dane eating his vitals, wolf, and throwing his tongue in the snake pit. Ah-ho! The ladies have mercias. It brought the dear prehistoric scenes all back again, as fresh as of yore, Matt and Marcus, natural-born lovers of nature, in all her moves and senses, And after that, now there he was, that mouth of mandibles, vowed to pure beauty. And his era Napogue, when she murmurously, after she let a cough, gave her firm order. If he wouldn't please mind, for us sings to one hope a dozen of the best favorite lyrical national blooms in La Villa sit, though not too much, reflecting on the situation, drinking in draughts of purest air, serene and reveling in the great outdoors. Before the four of them, in the fair fine night, whilst the stars shine bright, by she light of he moon, we long to be spoon before her honey old loom, the plaint effect being in point of fact, their being in the whole. A sea tuition so shocking and scandalous, and now, thank God, there are no more of them. And he pug-wing like Moriner bowed his crusted hode, and Tilly the tailors tugged a tar. In the Arctic news's Dag's dog's number, and there they were, like a four masters in the rolls, listening to Rolando's deep Darblin Ossian roll. Lady, it was just too gorgeous. That expense of a lovely tint, embellished by the charms of art, and very well conducted and nicely mannered, and all horrid, Rudy noises locked up in nasty cubbyhole. Tired as they were, the three jolly topers, with their mouths watering, all the four, the old connubial men of sea, yambing around with their old pantometer, in Duckgasalopics, Luke and Johnny McDougal, and all wishing for anything at all of bygone times, the walled times, and the falled times, and the hempty times, and the dempty times, for a cup of kindness yet, for four far back tumblerfuls of woman's squash, with them all four listening and spraining their ears for the millennium, and all their mouths making water.
Johnny. Ah, well, sure, that's the way up. And it so happened that there was poor Matt Gregory up, their Patner families, and up the others, and now really and up. Truly, they were four dear old he ladies, and really they looked awfully pretty and so nice and respectful. And after that, they had their fathom glasses to find out all the fathoms in their a tall hat, just now like the old Marquis of Porosgroof, the old determined despot, quiescence in barge, only for the extrusion of the salt water or the auctioneer there dormant, in front of the place near O'Cleary's, at the Darkumond number one, beside the ancient Dame Street, where the statue of Mrs. Dana O'Connell, prostitute behind the Trinity College, that arranges all the auctions of the valuable colleges. Booters Bay sisters, like the auctioneer Batters Bay sisters, the Permisius creators, that sells all the emancipated statues and flower sports. James H. Tickle, the JP of Hagen Green, after he made the centuries, going to the tail turn horse show before the angler nomads flood, along with another fellow, active, impulsive, and the shoe blacks, and the red shakes, and the plebeians, and the baronocks, and the capachers, children, jewels, everyone, god epoxy, goat epoxy, with the hours on them. High stepping, the fissure and fracture lines, 7-5-3s up, 3-5-7s down, to get out of his way. One a smuck, as their withers conditions could not possibly have been improved upon. Praises be to DCC, like Hopolopol cattles, rumping around their Judgiddy Yamen, and all the Terra Century horses and priest hunters, from the Korug, the confessionaries, and the authorities, Norad Americans and Suud African cattle raiders, so they say, all over their Tiara Dolf Fuoco in their gray half, a tall hat, and this amber necklace, and his crimson harness, and their leather jib, and his sheepskin hair shirt, and his Scotto Brett sash, and his paraplegian gallows glasses. How do you do, JP? Elevato, to find out all the improper colleges. And how do you do, Mr. Dame James? Get out of the way. Fork beard and blue toothed and bellied and boneless from Stratleafy and Aylesbury and North bellied. Oh wait, and North Anglesey, the whole Yahoo dirt sweepstakings and all the horsepowers. But now, talking of Hayastedeniers and volcanology, and how our seaborne isle came into existence, the explorer, his three sisters, and their two panteliers, that reminds me about the manoriums of the poor Marquis of Lyons and poor Johnny, the uh, pa- patri, the patrician. And what do you think of the four of us? And there they would now, listening right enough, the four saltwater widowers, and all they could remember, long, long ago, in the olden times, Momonarian, thrown darker our sorrows, the Princess Day, when fair Martgrate waited Sweden Willem and Lally in the Rain, with the Black Prince, now extinct, after the wreck of Warman's No and Bar Massageheads, when my heart knew no one care. When my heart knew no care. And after that, then there was the official landing of Lady Jael's casemate in the year of the flood 1132, SOS, and the christening of Queen Baltleby, the fourth Buzzersby, according to Her Grace, the Bishop Senior, off the What shape, and then there was the drowning of Pharaoh and all his pedestrians, and they were all completely drowned into the sea, the Red Sea, and the poor merkin Cornwig Wham, the official out of the castle on pension, when he was completely drowned off Aran Isles. At that time, Sir knows, in the Red Sea and a lovely morning paper, and thank God, as Salmon said, there was no more of him. And that now was how it was. The Azrian deeps o'er his humbod dumbone sweeps, and his witty the giddy is writhing her murmuries as her gracious triput to the grocery traders monthly. Mine Maud Gun Free by Glades Ryburn. Run Tables Reincorporated. A New World Presses, where the old conch crews now croons the yunk. Ex, ex yunk. Throw Darras Cram of Lawn Rock. Ye geek guy Kurt into Yord. Interest at to wander weapon Luftkat revolve. Fair, fair escaping in his natsert. Toozy tumbles. The mild Aunt Lizzie is as loose as her niece. Full fest with him, embrace behint. Has Ghent would deem on continent. So mocked per whence in Elxer wood ne hath his triest thing, Finn, like a newscasters in their old pliable of a Ronian devours, Jazzophony and Mirilovius, and Nippy she nets best, Fing, Sobos, and so he was, Sabas.
Marcus. And after that, not forgetting, there was the Flemish Armada, all scattered and all officially drowned, there and then on a lovely morning after the universal flood at about 11:32, was it? off the coast of Coming Home and St. Patrick, the Anabaptist and St. Kevin the Lacustrian, with too much of tolls and lottance of beggars after converting Port Scout and Dona, our first merits, and Napoleon the equestrian on his white horse of Hanover, rising Clunkthurf over the Clabenhogan and all they remembered, and then there was the Frankish flute of Noah's Dobers from Hedalgoland, round about the free butter year of Notre Dame 1132 PPO or so, disembunking from under Motham General Bonneboche, new Prupery, in his half-a-gay grey traditional hat. Allez, voila, come allez, villa. And after that, there he was, so terrestrial, like a nail scissor, poguing her scandalous and very wrong, the maid in single combat under the sycamores, amid the blutterings from the boom and all the gallows birds in a rah-nah pogue, so Silvestrius near the Queen's Colleges in 1132, Bryan or Bride Street, behind the Century Man on the door. And then again, they used to give the grandest, glorious Panquast universal howled-mouther Hibbert lectures on Anaxqui out of Doc's Archaeology, hello, Hibernia, from sea to sea. Matt speaking. According to the pitcher's postcard with Saxon grammaticals in the Latimer Roman history of Latimer repeating himself from the Vicereine or Lord Hugh, the Lacy Tynant, till Bockley shuts the Rajan, Garricknell and Regnum Rockery Roundup, Marcus Lyons speaking, to the oceanfuls of collegians green and high classes and the poor scholars and the old Trinitarian Senate and saints and sages and the Plymouth brethren droning along, Pianzanzangan and nodding and sleeping away there like forget-me-nots in her Abijant's service, round their 12 tables per Pyorgia at Pulgar Bolus in the 4 Trinity colleges, for earn as you learning Erin grow back of Ulster, Munster, Leinster and Connaught. The 4 grandest colleges supper the mather of Erin, of Killicule and kill them all, and kill each other, and kill Kelly on the floor, while their role was to rule the round roll that Rollo and Rollo rolled round. Those were the grandest gynecology histories. Lucas calling, hold the line, in the James Danes Landy Andis daughter Universary, for old acquaintance sake. This Unitarian lady, breathtaking beauty, Babham's bonniest, lived to a great age, or in and about the late number 1132 or 1139, bis Fitzmary round, where she was seen by many and widely liked, for teaching the Fatima woman history of Fatima Familius, repeating herself, on which purposeth of the spirit of nature as definely developed in time by Sattler Philomely, the past and present. Johnny McDougall speaking, give me trunks, miss. And present and absent and past and present and perfect arma virumque Romano. Ah, dear, oh dear. Oh, weep for the hour when Eve Aleve's bower. How it did but all come a-daying back to them, if they did but get gaze Gagagnagian to hear him there, kiddling and cuddling her after the gouty old Galahad, with his peer of Quinifears and his trode of Thurstuns, so nefarious, from his elevation of 1 yard 132 lines before the 4 of us in his Roman Catholic arms, while his deep-sea peepers gazed and sazed and days-crazed mazed into her dullock bloon rodeling, Olo sheen iron bowls by his Cornelius Nepos nepos. Anumke, napu! Quos! Ah, dear, oh dear, oh dear. Bosun braceth, Brythe when gooses ganded gammon. Mazza Agdod. It was so scalding sorry for all the whole twice 2-4 of us, with their familiar making the toten, and Lally when he lost part of his half a hat and all belongings to him in his old futile manner, cape, towel, and draw breeches, and repeating himself and telling him now, for the sake of senders, newslaters, and the massacre of St. Bryce's, to forget the past, when the burglar he shoved the wretch in churner oil, and contradicting all about Lally, the bawless master of Gloucestertown, and his old fellow the Lagoner in the Lock Lane Lighthouse, earing his wick with the Pierce of railing, and Ligenhig with his ladder up, and the old-time Turner and his Saturday early cloudsing, the old Cryone Skelly with the leather belly full of nelts, full of celts, full of lightweight belts, and all the bold drakes or ever he had up in the Bohereen off Artisheek's roads with moles and Mullach Mullady, the man in the Oran Mosque, and the old folks at home with Dwignan and Lepole, and in the grand conferation, as per the Cabanger's Register of the Filest Archives, and he couldn't stop laughing over Tom Tip Tarpey, the Welshman, and the four middle-aged widowers, all Nangles, Sangles, Angles, and Wangles. And now, that reminds me, not to forget the four of the Welsh waves, leaping, laughing in their lumbag walk over old Battleshaw and Diaddle Conchs, in their half-a-Roman hat with an ancient Greek gloss on it, in Chichester College auction, and thank God they were all summarily divorced 4 years before, or so they say by their dear, poor she-husbands, in dear byword days, and never brought to mind, to see no more the rainwater on the floor, but still they parted, raining water laughing, per Nupiter Privius, only terpere, on the best of terms and be forgot. Wilk was a plainly foretolk by their own pilgrim cockle-song, or they were singing through the wettest Indies, as I were going to Barrymacott, we fell in with a lot by the name of Peebles, and also in another place by their orthodox proverbs. So there was said that old fellow knows milk, though he's not used to it latterly. And so they parted in Dalkimot Nemetu. Aye, the good go and the wicked is left over. As evil flows, so evil flows. Well, sure, that's the way. As the holy maid of Cunut said to the hairy man of Cume, for his humble position in odd vices, woman, squash, part. Aye, by decree absolute.
Lucas, and oh so well they could remember at the time, when Carpery of the Gould Finns was in kingship of Pooland, Mrs. Dowager Justice Squelchman, foresitter, in her full-bottom wig and beard, Erminia Regina, in or airing or around about the year of by in disgrace 1132 or 1169 or 1768 YWCA, at the married male family man's auctioneer's court in Aranacuddle. Poor Johnny of the clan of the Douglas, of the poor Squitzman. Hohannes, nothing if not amorous, dinna forget. So frightened, zweep, on account of her full bottom, undullable atraxity, that put the Earl of Mercies on him, and the four masters in course, with a hang behanged them, because he was so slow in borstal her shoon for her, when he was grooming her ladyship instead of back scratching her mater familias proper, like any old Methodist, and all divorced and in a sense interdict, in the middle of the temple, according to their dear faithful. Ah, now, it was too bad, and stout entirely, all the missicurs and poor Mark or Marcus Bowend coat, from the Brownsbarrow in No Land's Land, the poor old chronometer, all persecuted with alley croaker by everybody, by decree absolute, through Heronsild, because he forgot himself, making wind and water, and made a Neptune's mess of all of himself, sculling over the Geomon's courseway, and because he forgot to remember to sign an old morning proxy paper, a writing in request to her suit herself, on stamped Bronanoleum from Roneo to Gillette, before saying his grace before a fish, and then and there and two there was poor Diane Cassius Pussycomb, all drowned too, before the world and her husband, because it was most improper and most wrong, when he attempted to, well, he was shocking poor in his health, he said, with shingles falling off of him, because he, now, pieces P to Wedmore, and let not the song go dumb upon your ire, as we say in the spasms of Davies, and we won't be too hard on him as an old Manx Presbyterian. And after that, as red as a Ross is, he made his last will and went to confession, like the general of Berkelyites at the rim of the Rom, on his two bare marrow bones to her worship, his mother, and Sister Evangelist Swiany, on Calcanin midnight, and he was so sorry. He was really, because he left the booty button in the hansom cab, and now tell the truth, unfriends never. She was his first Mess's doggess, and it was very pretty peltry, and there were faults on both sides. Well, he attempted, or so they say. Ah, now forget and forgive, don't we all? And sure, he was only funning, and his Andrew Martins and his old age coming over him, well, he attempted. Or the Connachie, he was tempted to attempt some Hunnish familiarities. After eating a bad carp in the rude ocean, and heaven to knows sure, he was dead sick abed. It was really too bad. Her poor old divorced male, in the house pays for the daying at the martyr Mrs. Macaulay's, where at the time he was taying and toying to hold the nurse-tendered hand. Ah, the poor old coax, and count the buttons and her hand, and frown on a bad crab, and doing to remember what dude they were Bjorn, and who made a who a snore. Ah, dear, oh dear, oh dear.
And where do you leave Matt Emeritus, the lay chief of Ababa Bishop, the exalted of French and German? Achoo! They were all so sorgy of poor boy Matt and the saltwater hat with the Aran crown, or she grew that out of too big for him of, or Menopus and his overalls, all falling over her in folds. Sure, he hadn't the heart in her to pull them up. Poor Matt, the old prime grime matriarch, and the queenly man, the purple blessing upon them, sitting there, the soul of the settlement, below ground, for the exponentiary right, the postulation of his cause. Who shall say? In her beaver bonnet, the king of the Caucasus, a family all to himself under Gaius Themistocles on his multilingual tombstone, like Navaliki Cayman, and she due to kid Sweet Pea time, with her face to the wall in the view of the poorhouse, and taking his rust and the oxide of Aaron under all the auspices, amid the rattle of hailstorms, calospinthiochromatocreening, with her ivy-clad hood, and gripping an old pair of curling tongs belonging to Mrs. Duna O'Cannelly, to blow his brains with, to the heights of New Ireland, heard the bristle hut, with his can of tea and a purse of Alfred cakes from Anna Lynch, and two cuts of Shackleton's brown loaf in Dislick and Dillisick, waiting for the end to come. Gordon Highland, when you think of it, the mirth dither. Aho! It was too bad entirely, all devoured by actively parlourmen, laudabilitor of women squelch, and all on account of the smell of Shackleton and Scratchman and his mouth-watering acid and alcoholic signs on the salt, and so now pass the loaf of Christ's sake. Amen. And so, and all.
Matt and loaf. So that was the end, and it can't be helped. Ah, God be good to us. Poor Andrew Martin Cunningham. Take breath. Aye, aye. And still, and all at the time of the Dynast days of old Conning, Soteric, Sulkenborg, and Bargo Musterbart, when they struck coil and shock haunts in old Hungerford on Mudway, where first I met the old poetric flied from May, and the Finian Haddies, and the Knoll Sharks, and the Muckstales turtles like an acoustic potish, and the Gree Super Bulliam, and how he poled him up his Bocat of Buator, and got big buzz for his name in the Air Week's honours from home, colonies and empire. They were always with assisting grace, thinking up, and not forgetting about Shims and Shawls Week in Old Lang Syne up, their whole 4 hosen bands that were for up. Beautiful sister misters, now happily married unto old Gallstone Belly, and there they were, always counting and contradicting every night. 'Tis early, the lovely mother of periwinkle buttons, according to the latter part of their anachronism. Up, 1, 2, up, 2, up, 1, up, 4. And after that, there now she was, in the end, the dearie, sold powder and all, the Butte Four Sisters, and that was her mudhen Republican name, right enough, from alum and oaths, and they used to be getting up from under in their tape and straw garlands, with all the warriors awake in their hair, at the kookaburra bell ring-a-ring, all wrong inside of them. Come in, you lazy loafs. All inside their poor old Shandon bell box. Come out to hell, you lazy louts. So frightened for the dang clangivore, like knock-knees bumped by the fister-man straits. Yes, at all hours every night on their mistletoes, the four old oldsters, to see was the Transton postscript come, with the cousins under their arm saxters, all puddled and mythified, the way the wind wheeled the school around, when nobody wouldn't even let them rustin from playing their gas spiels, crossing their sleep by the shocking silence when they were in dreams of yore, standing behind the door or leaning out of the chair or kneeling under the sofa cover and setting on the soup tureen, getting into the way something barbarous, changing the one wet underdown convibrational bed, or they used to slumber under, when hope was there no more, and putting on their half a hat and falling all over synepticals and panegyric and repeating themselves like svoloroving, like the time they were dadging the talky cook that chased them. Look, all round the stool, walk everywhere for a jewel, to break fire to all the rances, to collect all in bits of brown, the Rathier's envelopment, in spirits of time and in all fathom of space, and slooping around in a Borneen and bath slipper, and go away to old Patrick and see Dr. Walker. And after that, so glad they had their night tentacles. And there they used to be, flapping and cycling and doing a dune loop panamenantically around the waists of the ships in the wake of their good old phone again, as tired as they were at their wind's widths in the waves' lengths, the clipper built and the 5-4 masters, and lally of the cleft-off baggadettes and row of the fair cheats, exchanging fleas from host to host with arthrophosia, and he selling him before he forgot. Isolde, after having pre-lullaby deflegmatized his gutterful of throaty frogs, with a lungable fong in his suck-mouth ear, while the deer invoked to the coolin dare by a palpebrow's lift left, no doubt in his minder, till he was instant, and he was trustin' sister soul and brother hand, the subjects being their passion grand, that one fresh from the cow about Athan Meathan married and mailed, and that one too from Engvaskin saga, a booth, a gooth, a gev, a guthany egg, and the parkside pranks of quality queens, Cata efter kinna, for Earl Hoovdesoon's choosing, and Huber, and Harman, or how when thee upon thus, Isolde of binoculizers, memost in must egotum subconsciously senses, upas the deep profundity of multi-mathematical immaterialites, where be jubas in the pan-cosmic urge, the all-immanence of that which itself is itself alone. Here, Kala Aaron, exteriorizes on this our here now plane in disunitide solid like wood and gushous bodies with science say peril whitened passion panting pugno plangent intuitions of reunited selfdom murky way abstru adim in the higher dimensional selfless all self theming nasty methang idlesse and telling Jolly MacGolly, dear Mester John, the belated, dishevelled, hacking away at a parchment pied, and all the other analysts, the steamship's ant, the ladies' foursome, oven for, needin' for, dinkety, duck, down-a-lupping, our long tandem, like a four-tied schoonmasters, and their pair of green eyes, and peering in, so they say, like the narcolepts on the lakes of Coma, through the steamy windows into the honeymoon cabins, on board the big steamadories made by Fumadory, in the saloon ladies' madorned toilet chambers, lined over prawn silk and rub off the salty catera off her windows, and listening qua committee, the poor old Quakers, Obendur, to see all the honeymooners and the first-class ladies, serious me, a last spring as you fancy, in sheets far from the lad, courting in blankets en familias, and she, all all improper, in a lovely morning toilet, for the rose crumpler, the thrill driver, the sigh inspirer, with that olive throb in his nude neck, and swayin' and thayin', thanks ever so much for the tiny quote, which sort of made every thingling again so very much more delight a fillet, and the perfidly sweet of her, bootyfully yours under all their familiarities, by preventing grace, forgetting to say their grace, before chamberdory, and before going to boat, with the verges of the chapter, of the opering, of the month, of Nema Knatut, so pass the pogue for grace sake. Amen. And all quaking so fright, and she shaking, aching. Aye, aye.
For it was then a pretty thing happened, of pure diversion mayhap, when his flattering hand at the just right moment, like perchance some cook of corge, might clip the lad on a poot of porridge, hand shut his duck-house, the vivid girl, deaf with love. Ah, sure, you know her, our angel being, one of romance's fadeless wonder women, and sure now, we all know you dote on her, even unto date, with a wee little cree of Joyce's crisis, she renunited, they're disunited with rippy leaps to ropey lopes, the dear o' dears, and the golden importunity of a loofer's leave time, when, as quick, is greased pigskin, amoricus champius, with one Aragon throust, druve the massive viril victory flipshot, the both lines of forwards. It burns down, boys. Right jing bang shot, the goal of her gullet. Alris. And now upright and add them. And plays be honest, and pull it into yourself, as on man o' woman do another. Candidately, everybody, a mot for a mot. Come on, Mang and Dooth. There was this, well, you may call her a strapping modern ancient Irish princess, so and so hands high, such and such paddock weight, in her Madame Pullum smock, nothing under her hat but red hair and solid ivory. Now you know it's true in your heart of hearts. And a first-class pair of bedroom eyes, of most unhomey blue, how weak we are, one and all. The charm of favor's fond consent. Could you blame her, we're saying, for one scold logical moment? What would you do with that so tiresome old milkless Aram, with his tiresome duty peck and his bronchial tubes, the tiresome old harrig oranguran beaver, in his tiresome old 26 and sixpenny sheopards, plods drowsers, and his 30 bob and 9 penny tails plus toop? Haga Crustune. It were too exceeding really if one would's to offer at sulk an old everdual a pinge of hinge hit, the mainest thing ever, since Edom was in the bogues noivy. No, the dear heaven knows, and the farther from it if the whole stale misbetold, whoever the gulpable, and whatever the pulpus was, the twooned together, and giving the most passionable wahethers. They were doing a lally, a lolly, a dither, a dother, one lally, two dather, three lily, four dother. And it was a 5 full moment for the poor old time-tedders, tick-tacking in tank the count, till the spark that plugged spared the chokey he gripped, and volatile volupty, how bereaved are thy lungwings, and they could hear like of a lisp lapsing. That was her night of truth's throng plipping out of her chapelledacy, after where he had gone and pulped the questioned. Plop.
Now, it was totally terrific. The mum lube jubes. And then after that, they used to be so forgetful, counting mother parrot butts. Up 1, up 4, to membor her beautiful molden maiden name, for overflowering by the dream of woman, the onerist in 40 lands. From Greg to Doug, oh poor Greg, and Matt and Mar and Lou and Joe, now happily buried, are 4. And there she was, right enough, that lovely sight enough, the girl in Bonn at a shore, as for days galore, of Planxity Gregory, Agori, oh, Bunket not Oren, I. But, sure, that reminds me now, like another tell mastery repeating yourself, how they used to be in the lethargy's love, at the end of it all, at that time, up, always, tired and all, after doing the mouse work and making it up, over the community singing, up, the top loft of the voice box, the Mamalujo, like the senior follies at Murther Magri's, squatting round two by two the four Confederates, with Caxus and Cosworn worn, up their wet air register in Old Man's House, Millennium Road, crowning themselves in laurely branches and their cold knees and their poor up quadrupeds oversleep and all dolled up for their blankets and uh, maternity muffles and plimsolls and their bowls of brown shackle and milky and Botherham cloths, a potion of peace, a peace apportion, a lapel a lip, a lup a lap, for a cup of kindness yet, with hold take hand and nurse the only touch of eight, a lovely monk bound and for Exmel and wait the pinch and prompt poor Marcus Lyons to be not be heating the skillet one on for the live of ghosts, but to pass the teeth for choke's sake. And mensch, when it so happened they were all uh, sycamore and by the world forgot, since uh, the phlegmish hoopy cough for all the possibled after eat a bad cramp and Johnny Magoris and backscrat the poor bed sores and the farthing dip their caschol pandal of magnigorniosium and read a letter or two every night before going to dodo sleep a trace, with their catkins coffins in their twilight, a capital letter for further auspicious on their old one-page codex book of Old Year's Eve 1132 MMLJ, old style, the Sanctus More, by their fellow girl, the Mrs. Sherman's, in the summer seal household sample, with the Coracle Boardtail, her totem and tutu. Final buff known meal edition, and the regatta covers up to no up to navel from the order for their ruggle, their revs, and incubation, and Lally through their gangrenous spectacles, and all the good, or they did in their time, the the rigorites of Roe and O Mulknery Economy, Ap Mole or Lap Ap Morin, and Buffler Ap Matty Mac Gregory for Marcus on Podix by Daddy de Ware, Old Bagabroth, Beeves and Scrulagus, Crolls and Vassals, Insane, Sept and Civility, and one by one, and Sing and Mama Blujo to the heroish champion of Erin and his Barrow Calanders and Gwaine, and Goon.
And after that, now in the future, please God, after non-penal start, all repeating ourselves in medios loquos, from where he got a useful arm busy on the touchline, due south of her western shoulder, down to death in the love embrace, with an interesting tallow complexion, and all now unites sans familiars. Let us ran on to say Oremus prayer and homey sweet homily, after fully realizing the gratifying experiences of highly continental evenements, from Meter and Peter to Temple and Eslap, For old acquaintance to Peregrine and Michael and Farfassa and Peregrine, for navigants a peregrinantibus in all the old imperial and Phoenician sea, and for vogue allow it to a Missius, you fascinator, you sing a love steamer Dorian to ladies' eyes. Here's Trix and Dolzy, delightfully ours, in our doty ducky little blue, and roll his hoop, and how she ran when wit won free. The dimply blessed and awfully bucked, right glad we never shall forget. Though the days is gone, still they loves young dreams, and old Luke with his kingly leer, so well worth watching, and census more possessed of evident notoriety, and another more of the big-timers, to name no others, of whom great things were expected in the filming department, for the lives of Lazarus and old Luke sign, and she hailed her Cobhor Kohinoor, Sehenet on the praise Savahor Shanghai. Here, oh here is Sult, La Belle, Tristan, sad hero, here, the Lambeg drum, the Lombog reed, the Lumbag fiferer, the Limibig brezenes.
Anno Domini Nostri Sancti Jesu Christi. 999 million pounds sterling in the blueback bowels of the Bank of Ulster. Braw bobbies and good gold pounds galore, my girleen, a Sunday'll prank thee finely. And no damn loot'll come courting thee, or by the mother of the Holy Ghost there'll be a murder.
Oh, come, all ye sweet nymphs of Dingle Beach, to cheer Brian Bride, queen from Sybil surf riding, and her choric of shells of daughters of pearl, and her silver mono blue mantle round her. Crown of the waters, brine on her bow, shall dance them a jig and jilt them fairly. Yura, why would she bide with Sig slume sides to the Gore-Gram Grey barnacle gander?
You won't need be lonesome, Lizzie, my love, when your beau gets his glut of cold meat and hose soldiering. Nor wake in window macree, but snore sung in my old bell-bringin' surtout. Wishaw, won't you agree now to take me from the middle, say, of next week on, for the balance of my days, for nothing, what? As your own nurse tender. A power of high-steppers died game right enough, but who, Akushla, will beg coppers for you?
I tossed that one long before anyone. It was of a wet Good Friday, too, she was ironing, and, as I'm given now to understand, she was always mad gone on me. Grand goose greasing we had entirely, with an all-night eider-down bed picnic to follow. By the cross of Kong, says she, rising up Saturday in the twilight from under me, Mick, Nick the maggot, or whatever your name is, you're the most likeable lad that's come my ways yet from the barony of Bowermore.
Matthew, Mark Hugh, Lukey Hugh, John Woo Hugh. Ha! And still a light moves along the river, and stiller the mermen ply their kegs. Its pith is full, the way is free, their lot is cast. So to John for John, John of Gems, let it be.
Oh, yes, and that was chapter 2-4 of Finnegan's Wake. Jackie, how you feeling?
That like I just completed a very Irish tongue twister.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I really felt the Mahoney coming out in you there. A lot of the Irish blood was stirring in a lot of that reading.
Thank you.
You did
Yeah, when you
great.
started reading, I was like, okay, I see you. Don't play. Which Toby will know that's the highest praise if I say, okay, I see you. So.
Honestly, amazing. Thank you.
So how did it feel, like hitting those things without seeing them for the first time? I know you sort of had a little glance, but how was the cold read?
It was good. One thing that I really like about Joyce, but it also trips me up, is that I feel like a lot of the words he's written out phonetically, and it takes a second glance to figure out what the word actually was. Like there was a heaven to knows. And I was like, what is that? I guess it's like heaven will know, heaven knows, something like that. Yeah, and it made me wonder, like, who he was writing for. Who was his audience? Was his audience the kind that would know like words? I don't remember. There was one that struck me, and I was like, oh, that's like a $10 word. So I was wondering if he was writing for like the common folk, if that's why he was writing out these words more phonetically. Yeah,
I think he certainly wanted to. I think he certainly wanted to invoke a tone and a certain kind of style of speaking, and so words, phrases like "ah, dear, oh dear," making it very clear about how he wants it sounding, sort of eliding those words and crashing them into each other to make. But yeah, he does a lot of that, which is it's really a fun way to discover those things as they're coming out of your mouth.
He also plays with homophones a lot, like the use of the word "old" from "Old Lang Syne," but to mean "old" in certain places, and it takes your brain a second to be like, "Wait, this is the meaning for this thing that means something else." You know what I mean? And it catches me up. I do want to say before we get too far, Toby. Congratulations on reading the longest sentence I've ever seen in my entire life, from 394 to 395. And I will say, there's a moment where you took a breath and a little sigh, and I was like, oh yeah, because Toby sees that there's no punctuation. He's just going to have to keep going. And it starts with, near the top of 394, and after that, so glad that had their night tentacles. And it goes all the way to right before the section where Jackie comes in.
Right.
To so pass the pogue for grace sake. And I saw that that's all one sentence. And while you're reading that, I was listening, but I was also quickly scanning back for a period, an exclamation point. And I was like, oh, gross. You know?
Yeah. And then it's got all of those asides in there, those little brackets are set up. It's fun. And honestly, I think I noted that when I was doing the cut. And I remember going, okay, where do I cut? And I remember thinking, there's nowhere for me to cut because there was no paragraph.
There's no punctuation.
And I had to go way down to 395 to do it. But then while I was doing it, I didn't notice I was in the middle of that hellscape of trying to.
I noticed for you.
Yeah, but it was. I found this a really fun chapter to read, like a really playful chapter.
It felt that way, yeah.
And sometimes we read these and it can be a slog. Like we sort of get to the end and we all need a drink. And I feel as though this one, it felt joyful and it went by very, very quickly, which is
this
really
is the
fun.
one I got the most narrative out of, at least for me. And then also, I don't know, listeners will now know this. This is now a thing. You will know Old Lang Syne and Same Old Lang Syne are my two favorite Christmas songs. Same Old Lang Syne is extremely depressing about a guy meeting his ex in a grocery store and realizing that like she's like miserable without him. I don't know why I love that Christmas song, but but like all the plays on Old Lang Syne within this like really made me happy.
Yeah, there was a lot of those themes that popped up again and again, and him taking bits and pieces of the phrase and not always, and then old acquaintance showed up every now and then, and so phrases from the text, and then the number 1132 kept showing up as well, which is kind of repeats throughout the book, all the way through the book, which is sort of one of Joyce's things, and I think. There's a lot of theories about what 1132 means. 1132 was the year that that St. Lawrence O'Toole was born, who's the patron saint of Dublin. And so a lot of people feel as though it's that. Some people think it has something to do with the Bible verse from Romans 1132, which reads, "For God had consigned all to sin, that God may have mercy upon all." So very much so.
Yeah, everybody messed up, y'all.
Everyone's messed up. Yeah, and this theory here that I found on Reddit says that Joyce uses these references to subtly remind readers that creating a novel is a lot like God creating people in the garden. The artist imitates God, the reader imitates Eve, and the book is the apple. So think about that next time you're writing a historical romance novel, Jackie. You are God.
Yes.
I don't know if God would have intended historical romance novels to be written, but
Yeah, I don't know. Like he just the wall times and fall times and the empty times and the dimpty times for a cup of kindness yet. I was like, way to slide in
Yeah.
a lyric, my
Yep.
dude. Yes.
Yeah, so
I, I,
we got these four dirty old men taking us back to earlier on, where you've got HCE looking out of the bushes, watching the girls peeing in the park. Joyce was all about. He was a bit of a perv, and so
okay.
the
This is an
idea of
understatement.
Tristan and Isolde being sort of romancing each other on the by the ocean, and then these four old men watching them while they reminisce and ramble on.
I think that's the part that I know this is called the Tristan and Isolde section, but I was like, nah, this is about these four dudes
Yeah,
who eventually die. Like after watching, like I was like, this is what I got from it, and I thought that's what made it more fun. And then I also think that there's a moment where he just sums it up. He's like, it's basically Romeo and Juliet at 391. He says from Romeo to Gilead, and it's just like they're like, yeah, we know what the story is.
Yeah.
Like this is going to end badly for them.
Yeah.
But for me, this was really about these men, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very much a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead kind of thing, where it's someone who was kind of there when something interesting was happening, but they're just off to the side watching it happen, which is almost, like you say, more interesting because it's that you just move the camera a little to the right. What's happening just off to the left, and that's where we get the interesting stuff because that's more human. Because the people of Dublin can't identify with this princess who's been taken by a nobleman to marry a king, and then all of that stuff isn't particularly relatable. The idea of this idealized romance, even if it is historical romance.
And if you think about it, they're the ones who hear the song at the end because the other two are dead.
Right. Yeah.
So that section at the end that's in italics, that is a song.
Yeah, it's the Oxford World Classics does summarize this section, and there isn't a lot to summarize because essentially we have it's also. But this is how it summarizes the section, following the page and line numbering convention standard for this text. So we read pages 383 to 399 for section called Tristan and Isolde, and it's summarized the entire thing from 383 all the way up to 398 as a lover's tryst by the ocean at night time, during which they kiss while being observed by four old men, reminiscent and rambling. And then from 398 to 398.30 to the end of 399 is their four-part love poem, and love is put in quotation marks. So a poem, song, but it is certainly sort of an ode to these two. But it very much, whether or not it's the poem of Tristan and Isolde or it's the poem of the old men in honor of Tristan and Isolde, it's not clear in this summary, right. But it's also either way, I think works.
Yeah, I had took it as a song with the Lamberg drum and the Lombok reed. I was like, okay, cool. They're getting all these musicians together. But I still love and still a light moves along the river and still the mermen ply their keg. It's like, yeah, this stuff happened and then life keeps going. Sorry about it,
Yeah, its pith is full, the way is free, their lot is cast. Oh, put it on the tattoo list.
We're getting tattoos.
Yeah, and I are getting Finnegan's Wake tattoos at the end of the list.
Oh, nice. Are you getting matching ones? Or
no, we're gonna encourage each other to get something interesting. So we got some contenders
complimentary.
Here.
I have a superstition about matching tattoos, but complimentary tattoos.
Maybe we'll get half a line and cut right in the middle, so it only works when we put our arms up next to each other at your wedding.
Can I make a suggestion? What about you could do? It's kind of matching, but not. I mean, he mentions woman's squash and woman's squelch. There were so many times during this where, I mean, I know that squash in and of itself is means a few different things, but he loved using the onomatopoeias in this. It was a very he described the sounds very, very well.
Whatever you thought it meant that. And even if you hear it and you go, he couldn't. No, he meant that. He had his ways, and he was really loved to really be very descriptive about things that interested in him. He had hobbies.
Yeah, yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Describing bodily noises.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that you can add that to your tattoo list now, Toby. I have
Yes.
2 options. So,
Yeah,
although
and describing bodily noises will make it into the show description on
Good.
Apple Podcasts there. So when you
Good.
read it, when this comes out next month, you'll be able to see descriptions of
bodily functions.
yeah.
It's like the when you're watching a video now and it says like there are things below in the description for like trigger warnings and things like that. And this one will be the trigger warnings will be descriptions of bodily
noises. Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
I will say this though, and this is it's something that I continue to appreciate about Joyce, and I'm going to make a Beyoncé reference here, so stick with me, right?
Please.
Beyoncé puts in songs riffs and runs that lesser singers would make the entire point of the song, right? She'll just do this acrobatic thing, and it's just like sort of off to the side, and it's not the central, it's not the central trick or mechanism of the song. I feel Joyce does the same thing. Well, he'll put in these really clever use of wordplay, but he'll go by it so fast. And, he never lets you stop and be like, see that thing I did? He just keeps going. And I think that's actually, I think as all writers can take that as like, look, you can be confident in the fact that, yes, you have a grasp of the English language and you can understand wordplay and trust your readers to be smart enough to pick that up and don't just sit and wallow in it as a writer, right? And I think a lot of younger writers tend to do that. They're like, look at that cool thing I did. And you're like, and you have to keep going now,
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. I always every now and then come back and touch on the remembrance of the fact that a human brain came up with this stuff. It continues to amaze me, particularly since to Joyce this all has meaning. Whereas sometimes when you see people who are doing the automatic writing or doing the Dadaist stuff, it's supposed to be kind of nonsense, and it's nonsense on purpose. And this is not supposed to be nonsense in any way. Even though it seems nonsensical, the look that Keith gave you when you read that first section is fairly common, I think. Most people, and that's why most people will go straight to the thunder words, which are the words that have 100 letters in them, that he has. He has 10 of them in here, as the example of, look how crazy this guy is. But I think I'm becoming more and more convinced of the genius, which our friend Neil, who has read on a few episodes with us now, he'll be very pleased to hear that we're coming around on the genius of Joyce.
It's so nice. It's like standing in an art gallery and seeing a very absurdist painting that you think at first is like, oh man, this doesn't really apply to me. I think I'm going to take a step back. And then you go to move on and you're like, wait, no, I got to go back. What's that thing? And then every time you go back and look at it, you see like a different dimension of it, and it pulls you in further. And I think that's kind of Joyce.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that.
Look at it. We put in art galleries. We got Beyonce. We got historic romance.
We got squelches.
We got bodily noises. Yeah. This is the best episode of the podcast yet. Stamp it.
This is peak. We're all downhill after Italy.
We are. We're gonna come up to page 400, and y'all, the last 200 and some odd pages, it's gonna suck. I hate to say it.
We're just gonna get AI to read it to you.
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, that's a good idea. We should get AI to read just like sections of one episode just to see how much fun that is.
And your computer will burst into flames as the AI tries to figure out pronunciations.
You know what? As a part of my master's, I fed a bot all of the diaries of the young woman whose life I was working on, Jo Van Gogh-Bonger. And in order to fill in like historical gaps in the research that I was doing, I used AI to like make suggestions for what she might have said at this point in her life and at that point in her life. So it might genuinely be interesting to shove all of Finnegan's Wake into a bot and have it write like James Joyce and see what it would produce.
Yeah, it would. I mean, it would try. I'm not. And it's interesting because so much of Joyce is about the depth and the fact that you can go down 5, 6, 7, 8 levels into every word, every syllable. So it might be something that would fool someone who's not familiar with him. Maybe I don't know. I mean, maybe we could have an episode where we just sort of put in a fake Joyce and see if anyone calls us out on it. See if anyone's actually listening.
Yeah, but then you get things like, with his kingly leer, and I'm like, I see you. And I don't know if a bot would be able to, take pre-existing titles, separate them, understand the meaning of each word. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that might be the point, is to show that it can't do what Joyce does.
Right.
For all those people who are like, no, it's nonsense. Be like, well, we tried it with this and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also support the fact that like no bots are not going to take your job writers, because at the end of the day, they're just glorified word machines.
Yeah. And Joyce wrote all of Finnegan's Wake by hand.
Sometimes in crayon.
In crayon. Oh, amazing. Well, that is all the time we have this week for Wake. We will return next week for a summary of everything we've discovered in Book 2, the ever-popular recap episode. The recap of Episode 1 is one of our most popular episodes, probably because most people thought, I don't want to listen to all those episodes. Let me get a recap. So I'm here for that. I have been Toby Malone, joined, as always, by TJ Young. A massive thanks to Jackie Mahoney for joining us this week. Thank you, Jackie. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much
have
for
you
having
here.
me.
And we will link to all your stuff on our show notes. Is there anything that you're working on right now that you want to tell us about? Any fun things to promote?
Oh my gosh! I'm working on.
Aside from your big cryptid road trip that you just...
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, the road trip to see the Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant, West Virginia was essential.
You will be so close to me, it's not even funny, because I have driven there. It takes like an hour and a half to get there from my house.
No, where do you live?
Pittsburgh.
You live in Pittsburgh. That's amazing. I've always wanted to go to Pittsburgh. Never have.
Pittsburgh's fun. Pittsburgh's really fun with TJ. I'm going next summer for TJ's wedding. Woohoo!
Congratulations!
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, well let's stop the recording, but because otherwise this is going to go on forever. So thank you, Jackie and TJ, for being here, and we will see you all next week, freaks and geeks. This has been Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, just to hear it out loud. If you've made it this far, thank you for your dedication. Join us next week for another segment of Finnegan's Wake and a chat about what we've found. Wake is a Moon Street Media podcast, engineered by TJ Young and Toby Malone. Our theme song is The Ballad of Perso Riley, arranged and performed by Meg Logue after James Joyce. Wake is recorded in Canada, where Finnegan's Wake is in the public domain. For community and bonus content, join us at our free Patreon at patreon.com/wakepod. If you have questions about Finnegan's Wake, don't ask us. We're just as confused as you are. See you next week.